The sky over Arlington National Cemetery hung heavy with clouds, casting a gray light over the endless rows of white headstones. A gentle breeze moved through the trees, but the air felt still, reverent. In the middle of the sacred ground sat a young girl named Emily Hayes, her long blonde hair tucked behind one ear, a small American flag clutched tightly in her hands. Her wheelchair rested on the grass, slightly muddy from the rain the night before. At her side stood her grandfather, Jack Hayes, a man in his late 50s with strong shoulders and a tired gaze. His hand rested protectively on her shoulder. In the distance, the tomb of the unknown soldier stood in its solemn glory. The soldier on duty, Sergeant Colton Reeves, marched with unwavering precision. His uniform was spotless, his rifle firmly gripped, and his German Shepherd service dog stood at attention beside the tomb, unmoving. The rhythmic sound of Reeves's steps echoed like a heartbeat through the stillness. Jack leaned down toward Emily and whispered, "He's guarding the unknown. They don't stop, not for anything. Not even the weather." Emily's voice was barely audible. Not even for a kid in a wheelchair? Her words hung in the air, innocent and heavy. Jack paused, unsure how to answer. But just then, something shifted. Sergeant Reeves missed a beat in his march, just half a second off, but enough to stir the crowd nearby. Whispering began. Eyes turned. The guard had broken rhythm, something almost unheard of at Arlington. And then, to everyone's shock, he stopped completely. Reeves turned and began walking toward Emily. Gasps echoed around them. A security officer hesitated, clearly unsure whether to intervene. The German Shepherd followed, silent and obedient. Jack instinctively stepped between them, unsure of the soldier's intent. But Reeves halted, removed his hat, and knelt directly in front of Emily. "Ma'am," he said softly, "may I know your name?" Emily stared at him, wide-eyed. "Emily Hayes," she answered. He nodded. "Thank you for being here today." Emily's voice trembled. "I just wanted to say thank you for protecting us." The soldier's jaw tightened as he gently took the flag from her hand, pressed it to his chest, and closed his eyes. His voice cracked slightly. "People like you are the reason I stand guard." Then he turned to Jack, and for the first time their eyes locked. Something passed between them, recognition. Jack's breath caught. He stared harder. That face, those eyes, they were familiar, too familiar. Before he could speak, Reeves snapped back to attention, returned to his post, and resumed his march. But Jack couldn't stop shaking, because deep down he knew that soldier from somewhere. Jack Hayes couldn't sleep that night. Back at home, the silence in the house was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards. Emily had gone to bed early, her little flag still folded in her lap as she dreamed, unaware of the storm swirling inside her grandfather. Jack sat alone at the kitchen table, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee. His hands trembled slightly. He wasn't the kind of man to be shaken by much, not after everything he'd seen, but something about that soldier's eyes had hit him like a punch to the chest. He had seen that face before, not recently, years ago, maybe even decades, but in that brief moment, when Sergeant Colton Reeves looked at him, there was more than discipline or duty. There was pain, recognition, almost guilt. Jack leaned back in his chair, staring up at the ceiling. He'd buried a lot of memories over the years, especially those tied to Anna, his daughter, and her mysterious death overseas. She was supposed to be stationed at a base, a safe zone, but what came back was a flag and a folded letter. The next morning, Jack woke up before the sun. He didn't know what he was looking for exactly, but the unease in his chest wouldn't let him rest. After Emily's therapy appointment, he drove to the military records office on the edge of town. The receptionist, an older woman with sharp glasses and a soft voice, raised an eyebrow as he approached. "You're looking for files on Sergeant Colton Reeves?" she asked. "Active duty. That's unusual." Jack didn't flinch. "I need to know who he is, and if he has a brother." The woman hesitated, but something in Jack's voice told her this wasn't just a curious visit. Back at home, Emily was sitting in the living room watching old home videos. The sound of her mother's voice played softly from the screen. Anna was laughing, holding Emily as a baby, spinning her in the backyard. She had a smile like yours, Emily whispered to herself. Shadow, the German shepherd from the cemetery, had appeared in one of the videos, older but unmistakable. Emily paused the video, her brow furrowed. What was he doing with Mom? Later that evening, Jack returned home with a file folder in his hand and an expression that had grown even heavier. Inside the folder was a photograph, dated 2009. It showed 3 soldiers, arms around each other. One of them was a younger Jack. One was Lieutenant Daniel Reeves, and the third was Anna. Jack's fingers gripped the photo tight. Why didn't I remember this? He muttered. Then, a thought hit him like ice water down his spine. If Colton Reeves was Daniel's brother, what had really happened to Anna? The photograph stayed on the table all night. Jack didn't move it, didn't even try to explain it to Emily. He just stared at it, as if willing the image to speak. Anna stood between Daniel and himself, smiling, her arms slung casually around Daniel's shoulder, her uniform crisp, her eyes full of fire. Jack hadn't remembered that day until now, and even then, the memory was hazy, like smoke from a distant fire. How had he forgotten something so important? Or worse, had he blocked it out? The next morning, Jack picked up the phone and called a man he hadn't spoken to in years. General Marshal Owens, now retired, but once Jack's commanding officer. The call was short, and the response was chilling. Daniel Reeves and Anna Hayes were assigned to a classified operation in 2010, the general said flatly. That's all I can tell you over the phone. But Jack, there's something you need to see. Come alone. Jack hung up without a word. His chest was tight again. This wasn't just military red tape. Something was being hidden. Something connected to his daughter's death. Meanwhile, Emily sat outside in the backyard, watching the wind move through the trees. She held the paused home video remote in her hand, stuck on the frame where the German shepherd Shadow stood beside her mother. There was no mistaking it. The same intelligent eyes, the same calm posture. It was the dog from the tomb. But how had he known her mother? And why had he looked at Emily that day with such strange familiarity? Later that afternoon, Jack drove out to a quiet farmhouse on the edge of town where General Owens now lived. The old man looked thinner, older, like life had worn him down slowly, but his eyes were still sharp. He invited Jack in without a word and handed him a sealed envelope. These were meant to be destroyed years ago, Owens said, but I couldn't do it. Inside were several documents, all stamped confidential. And at the top of one file, Operation Hollow Sunday. Jack's hands went cold. The report detailed a failed rescue mission in Afghanistan. Daniel Reeves was listed as killed in action, but Anna wasn't. Her name was marked missing, presumed dead. No recovery, no body, no funeral. Jack's voice was hoarse. You told me she died in a vehicle explosion. Owens looked away. That's what they wanted you to believe. Jack's breath caught. His eyes scanned the pages again. What if Anna hadn't died at all? And worse, what if someone had made sure Jack never found out the truth? Jack sat in his truck for nearly an hour outside General Owens's farmhouse, the documents still clutched in his hands. The words blurred in front of him as thoughts raced through his mind. Operation Hollow Sunday. Anna listed as missing, presumed dead. A lie told and reinforced for over a decade. He felt betrayed not just by the military, but by himself. How could he have accepted her death so easily? He had buried a flag, a name, and a silence, but never a body. And now he couldn't ignore the cracks in the story. Back home, Emily was unusually quiet at the dinner table. Her fork moved the mashed potatoes around her plate, untouched. Jack noticed but didn't press. She finally looked up and asked, "Grandpa, if someone goes missing, does that mean they can still come back?" The question hit Jack like a blow. He set his glass down slowly. Sometimes, yes, but not always. Emily nodded, then added softly, "Shadow remembers her. I saw it in his eyes. The way he looked at me. He knows something." Jack didn't answer. He didn't know how. That night, After Emily had gone to bed, Jack spread the documents out on the kitchen table. He studied every line, every name. Anna's last known location was a remote village in eastern Afghanistan. She had been part of an extraction team trying to retrieve a captured informant. The mission failed. Several soldiers died, Daniel Reeves among them. Anna disappeared. But there was no witness account, no confirmation, just a silence written into the paperwork. That was the most terrifying part, how easy it was to erase someone on paper. Driven by a surge of determination, Jack made a decision. He needed to speak to someone who had been on that mission. If Daniel Reeves died there, then surely someone from his unit had survived. And if Colton Reeves was Daniel's brother, he might have answers. Answers the military wouldn't give. Jack grabbed his phone and dialed the number listed for the Honor Guard unit. The voice that answered was clipped and formal. But when Jack gave his name, there was a pause. Then, Sergeant Reeves is unavailable. But he left instructions. If you called, he'd meet you. The meeting was set for the next morning. Arlington, near the backside of the cemetery, away from tourists. Jack didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, reliving moments he thought were long buried. The guilt, the questions, the regrets. Why had he accepted the official story without fighting harder? And now, for the first time in years, he wasn't sure if he was chasing the truth, or if the truth was about to catch up with him. The morning fog hung low over Arlington, weaving between the headstones like silent ghosts. Jack arrived early, walking alone through the cemetery with slow, deliberate steps. He passed by rows of names he didn't know, yet respected deeply. He stopped near a quiet path behind the tomb of the unknown soldier, just as instructed. For several minutes, there was only stillness. Then, out of the fog, Sergeant Colton Reeves appeared, dressed in civilian clothes, his posture no less rigid than in uniform. Jack didn't speak at first. He studied Colton's face closely. Without the mirrored sunglasses and ceremonial hat, the resemblance to the young man in the 2009 photo was even stronger. But there was more. Behind Colton's eyes was a storm barely contained. Grief, anger, and something else, guilt. "You knew her," Jack said finally, his voice low and steady. Colton nodded once. "Yes, I did." Jack's jaw clenched. "She died over there, didn't she?" Colton's answer came after a long silence. "No, she didn't." The words hit Jack like a gunshot. For a moment, everything went quiet around him. "Then where is she?" he asked, his voice cracking. Colton looked down at the ground, his hand gripping his wrist tightly. "After Daniel died, the mission went sideways. The informant we were trying to extract was a decoy. It was a setup. Anna, your daughter, she stayed behind to cover our retreat. We thought she was killed when the building collapsed. But..." His voice trailed off. Jack stepped forward. "But what son?" Colton met his gaze. "A year later, during a covert surveillance op in Pakistan, I saw her, briefly, from a distance. She was alive, but she wasn't Anna anymore. She was with a group. Rebels. Locals said she had been taken in, brainwashed, or maybe she chose to stay." Jack's face went pale. "No, she would never abandon her country. Or her daughter." Colton's eyes softened. "I didn't believe it either, but I tried to report it. My superiors shut it down. Said I was seeing ghosts." Jack stepped back, overwhelmed. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from fury. "You let me bury her. You stood by and said nothing." Colton's voice cracked. "They made me sign a non-disclosure. They threatened to strip my honors, court-martial me. But I never forgot. That's why I walked toward your granddaughter that day, because I saw Anna in her eyes. I couldn't keep marching like nothing happened." Jack's heart pounded. Everything he thought he knew was unraveling. And now, he had to face the possibility that his daughter might still be alive, but no longer the person he once knew. Back at home, Jack stood in the hallway outside Emily's room, watching her sleep. Her breathing was soft and steady, her small hand curled around the corner of the folded flag. It was the same flag Colton had pressed to his heart just days ago. Jack's mind raced with everything he had heard. Anna alive, seen in Pakistan, but possibly changed beyond recognition. He felt like the ground beneath him was no longer solid. What haunted him most wasn't that she might be gone, but that she might be alive and lost in a world he couldn't reach. In the morning, Emily found Jack at the kitchen table with papers scattered everywhere. Photos, reports, the old military file marked Operation Hollow Sunday. She approached cautiously, sensing his mood. "You found something, didn't you?" she asked softly. Jack hesitated. "Maybe. I'm not sure yet." Emily didn't press him. Instead, she sat beside him and whispered, "I think she's out there, Grandpa. I just feel it." Jack looked at her, this fragile, fierce little girl, and for a moment, he saw Anna's spark in her eyes. The same quiet strength. The same refusal to give up. Later that day, Jack met again with General Owens. He laid everything on the table, the documents, the conversation with Colton, even the photograph of Anna years ago. Owens sat silently, reading the details with furrowed brows. "I remember her," he finally said. "Bright, stubborn, and brave as hell." Jack nodded. "She's my daughter. I want to bring her home." Owens leaned back in his chair, hesitant. "You do understand what you're asking, don't you? If she's still alive and she stayed, we don't know who she is now. You might find her, but you might not recognize her anymore." The words cut deep. Jack had feared exactly that. But even worse was the thought of doing nothing, of letting Emily grow up believing her mother died a hero, when the truth was far more complicated. Jack clenched his jaw. "I don't care who she is now. I just want her to know her daughter is waiting." Owens finally nodded. "There's someone I can contact, off the record. But if you do this, there's no turning back." Jack agreed without blinking. That night, Emily sat with Shadow on the back porch, her hand resting gently on the dog's head. She whispered to him like he could understand every word. "If you saw my mom, can you take me to her?" The dog's ears twitched, eyes focused on the horizon like he, too, remembered something. And far away, in a place neither of them knew yet, a woman with haunted eyes stood at a window, watching the stars, waiting for a name she hadn't heard in years. 2 weeks later, Jack stood at the edge of a private airstrip in Virginia, the engine of a small government-chartered jet rumbling behind him. General Owens had come through. Off the books, off the radar. A contact in northern Pakistan had confirmed sightings of a woman matching Anna's description, living in a remote mountain village near the border. No photos, no proof, just a whisper passed between former operatives. Jack didn't care. It was enough. With one worn backpack slung over his shoulder and a heart weighed down by 1,000 questions, he boarded the plane. Back home, Emily sat with her therapist, Sarah Whitmore, in the sunlit corner of the clinic. Sarah had known Jack since his wife passed. She understood his silence, his walls. Emily told her everything. About the soldier, about the dog, about the photo of her mom and Uncle Daniel. "Do you think people can come back different?" she asked. Sarah didn't answer right away. "Sometimes the world changes them so much, they don't know how to come back," she finally said. "But love can remind them who they used to be." Meanwhile, across the ocean, Jack's journey had brought him to a village surrounded by craggy cliffs and narrow paths, places untouched by time. The air smelled of dust and smoke. His guide, a former interpreter named Farid, led him quietly through stone alleys. Locals stared. Foreigners weren't common here. Jack clutched a photo of Anna in his jacket pocket like a relic. He showed it discreetly. Most shook their heads. One old man pointed toward a hillside, speaking softly in Pashto. Farid translated, "There is a woman. They say she lost her name. Keeps to herself. Lives with the widows." That night, Jack slept in a modest room above a tea shop, restless. He clutched Anna's dog tags, kept all these years in a small tin box. He thought about her as a child, her scraped knees, her fierce questions, the way she ran into the arms of danger like it was a game. He whispered into the dark, "Please, Just still be you. The thought that she might not remember him at all was worse than anything else. Back in Virginia, Emily drew a picture of her mom and gave it to Shadow. The dog sat still, staring at the crayon lines as if trying to understand. "She's not gone," Emily told him softly. "You know that too." The dog rested his head on her knee, silent and still, like he agreed. At sunrise, Jack followed Fard up the mountain path. And there, at the edge of the world, a woman stepped out of a doorway and froze when she saw his face. The woman who stood in the doorway was thin, her face weathered by years under a brutal sun. A long scarf covered her hair, and her eyes, gray-green, sharp and cautious, narrowed when they met Jack's. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Jack's breath caught in his throat. His boots felt like they were sinking into the ground. He knew those eyes. No photo, no file, no document could have prepared him for the ache that struck him now. "Anna?" he said, his voice cracked and small. The woman didn't answer right away. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Then, softly, in perfect English, she asked, "Who told you where to find me?" Jack blinked, stunned. Her voice, it was hers, deeper, wearier, but undeniably Anna's. "It doesn't matter," he replied, eyes locked on her. "I needed to see you, to know if it was true." Her face tightened. "They should have let me die," she whispered. Jack stepped forward. "They told me you did." Inside the small clay-walled home, they sat across from each other on a woven rug. The kettle steamed between them. Jack noticed her hands. They trembled slightly when she poured the tea. She watched him like a stranger, and yet, not quite. "Emily," he said suddenly. "She's 10 now. She has your eyes. Your fire." That made her flinch. For the first time, her expression cracked. "I didn't want her to grow up with a traitor for a mother." Jack's voice hardened. "You're not a traitor. You stayed behind. You saved lives." Anna looked down. "I survived. That's all. I was injured, taken in by people who didn't know who I was. I could have escaped, but I didn't. I didn't know who I was anymore. And when I did, I was ashamed." Jack reached into his coat and pulled out the dog tags, placing them gently in front of her. Her hand hovered over them for a long time before finally picking them up. Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought I'd never see these again." Outside, the wind carried dust across the hillside. Anna stood at the doorway, staring down the mountain, her shoulders shaking. Jack joined her, hands in his pockets. "You don't have to decide now," he said gently. "But Emily, she's waiting. And she still believes her mother is a hero." Anna closed her eyes. For a long time there was only wind. Then she whispered, "I don't know if I remember how to be her." Jack looked at her, eyes firm. "Then let her remind you." The air was thick with anticipation as the small plane touched down on American soil. Jack sat by the window, eyes red, hands clasped tightly in his lap. Beside him, Anna stared silently ahead, her posture tense, her breath shallow. The scarf was gone now, her hair cut short, streaked with gray. She looked like a ghost returning from war. Not a hero, not a traitor, just someone broken trying to return to a life that had moved on without her. Jack reached out, placed a hand over hers. She didn't pull away. Back at the house, Emily stood on the front porch in a simple white dress, holding a small photograph in both hands. Shadow sat beside her, ears perked, eyes on the road. She didn't know what to expect, only what her heart hoped for. She had asked no questions when Jack called from overseas. She only waited, quietly, drawing her mother's face from memory over and over in crayon, as if that might summon her back. When the car finally pulled up, Emily didn't move. Her breath caught as the door opened. Anna stepped out slowly, her eyes locking with the girl who stood so still, so silent, holding a drawing in her tiny hands. Time seemed to stop. The wind picked up slightly, lifting strands of Emily's hair, brushing across Anna's face like a forgotten memory. Jack stayed by the car, giving them space. Anna stepped forward once, then again. Emily clutched the drawing tighter, her eyes wide with something between hope and disbelief. "Are you really her?" she whispered.
Anna knelt down, eyes full of tears. "I don't know if I am," she said honestly, "but I want to be." Emily looked down at the drawing. Then she slowly extended it toward her mother. It showed a woman with short hair, a military uniform, and a little girl beside her, smiling. "I remember you like this," she said. Anna took the drawing, her fingers trembling. And for the first time in over a decade, she began to cry, not from fear or shame, but from something she hadn't felt in years, belonging. Inside, Jack watched from the window. He saw the way Emily leaned into her mother's embrace, the way Anna clutched her like she might disappear again. His heart, long burdened with guilt and unanswered questions, finally began to loosen. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was real. And sometimes, real was more powerful than perfect. That night, as the house settled into silence, Anna sat by Emily's bed, stroking her hair gently. "Tell me everything I missed," she said. And Emily smiled, as if waiting her whole life for that moment. Weeks passed, and slowly, life began to reshape dentro de casa dos Hayes. The silence that once lingered in every room had been replaced with soft conversations, cautious laughter, and the gentle rhythm of healing. Anna still struggled to sleep through the night. Sometimes she would wake up covered in sweat, disoriented, unsure of where or who she was. But Emily was always there. With a soft voice, a hand on hers, a presence so pure it reminded Anna of everything she had once been. Jack watched their relationship grow with quiet reverence. He kept his distance at first, not out of resentment, but out of respect. He had spent so long carrying anger, for the military, for himself, even for Anna, that it took time to let it go. But one afternoon, while working in the garage, Anna joined him. She didn't say anything at first, just picked up a wrench and stood beside him. "You were a good dad," she said suddenly. Jack froze. His voice broke when he replied, "I tried. I thought I lost you forever." They spent hours that day talking. About the past, about Daniel, about the war that had taken so much and given so little in return. Anna confessed the weight of the years she had been gone, not just surviving, but hiding from herself. Jack listened, not as a soldier, not as a father, but as a man trying to understand a daughter who had returned from the edge. "You're not broken," he told her. "You're just finding your way back." One Saturday morning, they returned to Arlington. Anna wore her uniform again, not for the military, but for herself, to reclaim something lost. Emily held her hand the whole time, walking beside her mother and grandfather in front of the tomb of the unknown soldier. When they arrived, Sergeant Colton Reeves stood at attention. He looked at Anna, then at Emily, and gave a subtle nod. Shadow sat at his side, still and proud. No words were exchanged. None were needed. At the end of the visit, Anna knelt before the tomb and placed a single white flower at its base. Emily followed with her folded drawing. Together, they stood in silence. It wasn't about grief anymore. It was about recognition. About honoring not just those who never came home, but those who did, changed, scarred, and still trying. That night, back at home, Emily asked, "Are you going to stay forever now?" Anna smiled, pulled her close, and whispered, "I may have been gone a long time, but now I'm finally home."